Rewriting Ragnarok Part 10. Welcome back to the 10th installment of the God of War Ragnarok Rewrite series, where I alter both the story and the gameplay into the ultimate what-if scenario. As some of you may already know, this will be the last part of God of War Ragnarok Part 1, which I meant to change the name a long time ago to God of War Fimbulwinter. Better late than never? Anyways, this is the end game, the grand finale, and I'm not gonna waste any more time. It's time to end this once and for all. So without further ado, let us begin. Previously, on Part 9, new friendships were made, while old friendships were restored. A celestial king was rescued, but an Aesir has fallen. Now, we follow Kratos and Atreus as they decide what to do next. Kratos and Atreus turn their attention to Freyr's camp. Almost everyone there is completely settled down from their successful mission. You'll be granted with another chance to manage your gear. This will also be where you'll be properly introduced to the camp. All of the dialogue in the original, which involves meeting these characters, will be present here, including Hildisvini's, but it will not be a cutscene. The main campaign only begins when you approach Freya, who is still tending to Mani. Freya applies the finishing touches to Mani's wounds. She asks if he's okay as she helps him to his feet. He tells her that he is, and he begins to stand up on his own. Atreus walks up to Mani and says, "It's nice to have you back." Mani stares at Atreus, not knowing who is talking to him. "I'm Atreus. This is my father. We've heard a lot of things about you." "Really? And what exactly have you heard?" "We saw a prophecy." The very moment the words prophecy comes out of Atreus' mouth, Mani's face transforms from calm to worried, and he begins to back up. He says, "So that is why you rescued me. You wasted your time." "Not the only reason. Helheim needed its moon back. But the prophecy said..." "I know what it said! I know what my prophecy said!" Mani's little outburst causes all of the celebration to turn to silence, and everyone begins to look in their direction. Atreus says, "Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I just have a few questions. The prophecy spoke of an eclipse, and Skull and Hati devouring the sun and the moon. What does it all mean?" Mani says, "It's the first step to the end of the world. It allows Ragnarok to happen. So, you control the moon, and your sister controls the sun. If we were able to find her, you can make the eclipse." "And why exactly would I do that?" Freya steps in and says, "Your Highness, with all due respect, Odin has to die. His reign over the realms has to end. And without Ragnarok, how else are we supposed to reach him?" Mani responds, saying, "You don't understand. The sun and moon is not just what we control, it's what we are. In order for this prophecy to work, we have to sit in the sky and let those dogs eat us." "What? It didn't say that you..." "What did you think?" Mani walks up on Atreus and he backs up. He says, "You think you're gonna make us sacrifice ourselves just so you can have a war?" Kratos then intercepts the two to speak to Mani. He says, "Calm yourself. We gave you a question, not a demand." Kratos and Mani stare at each other sternly. From a distance in the sky, you can see the moon appear in the sky once again. Mani says, "The answer is no. Thank you, Freya. Be well." With that, Mani leaves Freyr's camp. Everyone stands there, silent and dumbfounded. Freya shows her dissatisfaction towards Kratos about not backing her up while she was trying to convince Mani. Mimir says, "Looks like we're back to square one. Where do we go from here?" "I don't know. Maybe I could check Vali's notebook to see if there's anything we could use." "Doubt there be anything there of use. Vali was keen on destroying everything and everyone." Tyr then steps in and says, "You have his notebook? Safe to assume he's dead then." This is when Brock will boast about his spear getting the job done. Tyr will then begin to warn them that there will be nothing to stop Odin's wrath. Freya combats this, her intentions being clear. Tyr will continue glazing, which sparks a light bulb in Atreus' head.
Not his only concern. The mask. If I go back to Asgard, I can...
Go back.
Just like the original, Kratos will be against this idea, but Atreus will then convince his father to trust him and that he knows what he's doing. Once they agree, Kratos tells Atreus that they'll be back at Sindri's when he returns. They salute Atreus and he sets off, heading back to Asgard, but not without Sindri altering his key to get out of a bad situation. Atreus heads back to Midgard, knowing that Hugin is waiting as transportation. And just like the original, he will get another surprise visit by Angrboda with Fenrir. Their conversation will be the same, but only joined with a few more extra lines. Atreus tells her about how they just rescued the Celestial King, and he also tells her how he's seen Beli in Helheim, but unfortunately, no sign of Ran. He then tells her that he's going to see Odin, which she will be skeptical of, in hopes that he knows what he's doing. Atreus goes inside the cabin and is transported by Hugin into Asgard. You are spawned back into Modi's old room. You notice that there will barely be sunlight shining through the window, for it is a cloudy day in Asgard. Atreus searches under his bed to retrieve his Eider blade, but will quickly realize that it is nowhere to be found. This causes Atreus to panic even more. Nevertheless, he has no choice but to continue on without it. When you walk out of your room, you will hear Thrud and Sif talking in the other room. They discuss about the recent death of Vali. Sif, of course, blames Loki for this, and Thrud will defend him. However, this time, you will notice that they seem more distraught and stressed. The conversation still ends with Sif saying that Forseti is investigating the murder, and Thrud walks off. Atreus then readies himself to play mind games with Odin and enters his office. Odin will be sitting at his desk when he says, "Vali's dead."
Happen to know something about that? Anything?
Well, I mean, he did cause a lot of trouble.
Sure. But have you seen anything? Something noteworthy?
I mean, he was alone. Maybe he picked the wrong fight? Or got caught in a trap? Haven't seen anything. Honest.
Well, I have to ask. Never believed you had anything to do with this. I'm glad you're back.
When he hands him the mask, Atreus will turn and stare at Odin's desk, and he will see his Eider blade sitting there. Odin notices this and says, "Oh, that. You see, right when you left, I heard a strange noise coming from your bed and found this. Seems a bit dangerous to have lying around, don't you think? Where'd you get it?" "When I was with Thor. The chief of the village had it. I'm still trying to figure out what it is, exactly." Odin picks up the blade. "Well, if I were to guess, I'd say he stole it. This reminds me a lot of giant craftsmanship." I thought the same thing, which is why I was gonna try and fix it. After we finish this, we do have someone for that. Just try to keep it in a more secure place next time. Odin gives Atreus the Eider blade, and Atreus begins to make up for his mistake and mistranslation, saying that the missing piece of the mask was actually in Niflheim instead of Helheim. Odin instantly puts Atreus to work, allowing him to have Ingrid again and sending him to find Thor. The only problem being not knowing where Thor is. In the original, this is where you'll find Thrud in a hall and she will lead you to Thor. But in the rewrite, she will be somewhere else. You'll have to go outside in Asgard and follow a path in order to find her. When you step outside the Great Lodge, you'll hear someone say, "You call yourself Einherjar?" In front of the lodge, you can see Heimdall next to Galoptapir, or however you pronounce his name, who just got done beating up a few Einherjar. "Embarrassing. You all know better than that little old goat over there. Hey, go get it!" Heimdall smacks Galoptapir, and it charges at the goat to go smack it, but is stopped by Vidar, who holds it by the horns and tosses him. He then stomps down with his iron boots and causes a split in the ground towards Heimdall, who zips out of the way and says, "Oh, is that little guy yours? I forgot that tending goats is the only thing you're good for. Run along then." Vidar spits on the ground, picks up the goat, and walks away. Heimdall talks to the still injured Einherjar who are laying on the floor. "As worthless as you all are, take some pride in him. That loser is the worst among the Aesir. Being called my brother is the only merit he has." If you try to engage with Heimdall, he'll ignore you disrespectfully. You'll follow a path which will lead to the training grounds, which Odin showed you a tour of before. You'll look down and find Thrud there, training all by herself. This time you'll be able to go down to her. She swings her blade and mace one last time with full force and begins to breathe heavily. Before Atreus can say Thrud's name, she will say, "Ugh, this is taking too long. I need to be stronger." She tries to go for another swing, but it is very slow and weak. Atreus says, "You seem tired. Maybe you should go rest. Everyone needs it." "Did you do it?" "What?" She turns around towards him and says, "Did you or any of your people kill him? Don't lie to me, Loki." "No. I had nothing to do with it. I promise." She turns back around and sighs. "He shouldn't have been banished. I told grandfather to figure something out." "Well, the visions in hell. He attacked Asgard. He was clearly dangerous to everyone. You don't know him. You don't just do things like that for no reason. Which is why I should have..." Thrud fails to find her words. "You're right. I'm sorry. I came here because I need to find Thor." Thrud composes herself and instantly figures where her father could be. She tells Atreus to follow her, and he does. As they walk to the bar, Atreus mentions how he meant what he said back in Hell about how he would help convince her mom to let her become a Valkyrie. Thrud appreciates this just like in the original. Atreus will then say, "So, I noticed you were training all by yourself. Do you have a sparring partner?" "I don't. The Valkyries are too busy helping grandfather." "I could be one, if you like." "Yeah, I'm not that desperate." "Hey, what's that supposed to mean?" "It means that you needed my help to move anything heavy back in hell. Strength isn't everything, you know. In this situation, it kinda is." They then make their way to the bar, where all of their weapons will be confiscated. The bar will be full of ashy, mean Einherjar trying to get lit. As you navigate through the crowd, you'll stumble upon Ve, who will be standing next to an Einherjar, with a wooden jug in hand. He notices Atreus and greets him. "Hey, kid!" Hey, Ve? What are you doing here? Ready to have your first drink and become a man?" "Actually, I'm here to find..." "Yep, he's ready! First one's on the house!" Before Ve can come and grab Atreus, Thrud intercepts them and tells him to take that crap somewhere else. Ve responds by saying, "This is my bar, and you better buy a drink before I kick your ass out!" Right when he says this, the Einherjar who was standing next to him starts shouting and cheering. Ve responds by decking him in the face, breaking his mug against his skull and knocking him out. He then yells in the distance, "Hey, we need more mead," and begins to walk off. They find Thor sitting down, drinking himself away just like in the original. This scene will be unchanged, with Thrud and Atreus trying to get the God of Thunder to get up and leave, but he refuses until Atreus annoys him and he starts a bar fight. Ingrid will retrieve your bow, but not your Eider blade. This part will also be unchanged, the only difference being that Ve can be seen in the distance trying to get some action. Everything will play out the same until the big boy shows up and begins to manhandle you. The hammer of Thor will come to the rescue, officially ending the scrap. Thor drinks himself until he can no longer stand, forcing Atreus and Thrud to have to carry him up. As they do this, Ve will clap alongside them, boasting about the bar fight. "You know, kid, I didn't think you had it in you, but you proved me wrong today. That was a good scrap. Reminds me of the old days. Back when I was Arthur the Bold." Thrud and Atreus ignore him as they struggle to bring Thor outside. When you open the door, you'll notice that the sun is out once again. They sit Thor on the floor and he slightly gets his awareness back. Thrud tells him to get up, and Thor will say that he knows she's disappointed. Right when Thrud denies this, Ve will come in and say, "Oh, this is the part I don't like. You getting all sad and mopey when it's all over. How many times do I have to tell you? This is what it means to be a god. Not any of that other shit my brothers try to tell you. Thrud gets angry and says to Vey, "Go away, you're not helping," which causes Vey to back off, leaving in annoyance. The rest of the scene will be the same. Thrud will give a talking to her father, trying to help him recover from his relapse. Thor ends it by saying he fucked up, causing Thrud to storm off. Thor rises, now being ready to assist Atreus on his mission. He calls Hugin and they are transported to Niflheim. The mission with Thor and Loki looking for the missing piece of the mask will be the same. Atreus tries to talk some sense into Thor, while Thor will at first be irritated by a child that's giving him a parent lecture. Which means, and I'm sorry to disappoint everyone, but Thor's throw up scene will be the same. I know a lot of people ask me to change that scene, but narratively, when you engage in combat, you'll finally be able to use your Eider blade. However, once again, the nature of the blade will be different from the last time you used it. Instead of tagging an enemy in order to control their gravity or to turn them on your side, Atreus will have the ability to summon a small amount of black breath. If you aim with L2 and press R1 or R2, Atreus summons a small wall made of black breath. The small wall will appear in front of him and will protect you from any enemy or attacks that they do. This will help with enemies that want to swarm and overwhelm you, allowing you to easily deal damage by shooting your bow. If you don't want to be a ranged guy, however, there will be another option of offense. Press triangle to have the Eider blade suck up all of the black breath back into it, causing it to be pulsing with energy. Atreus lifts the broken blade as if he's about to slam it, and you'll have to time R1 to cause an explosion which knocks back and damages all enemies. This doesn't come without its risk, however. If you miss the timing or an enemy hits you in the middle of it, the explosion will knock you back instead, causing damage to your health. So basically, the reason why the Eider blade's abilities keep changing is because it will have a different ability for each of the 9 realms. So far we have seen 3, but the other 6 have yet to be explored. Atreus will also pick up on this idea, being that the blade's abilities changed 3 times at this point. He'll also be slightly concerned about the black breath, being that he remembers this magic from 2018. Atreus, just like in the original, will try to talk no jutsu Thor throughout the whole mission, which actually seems to be almost working. After they deal with the Frost Ancient, they will reach another wall. Before Thor easily disposes of it, Atreus will stop him wanting to do it himself. He uses a black breath explosion to try and blow up the wall, but this will unfortunately backfire and blow Atreus away. He gets up and sees that the wall is still there, only managing to blow up a few sickles. Thor will be amused and start to laugh as he says, "Even with all of your tricks, still weak." Thor dispatches the wall and they move on. The rest of the level is the same. Atreus is able to find the mask but almost gets abandoned by the gods of Olympus, but he's saved by Thor. Odin quickly shows up to steal this moment from them, but then Sif steals the moment from Odin, saying that Forseti has proof of Loki's father killing Vali and to take Loki away. Odin tells them to stand down. Sif confronts Odin on his hypocrisy, but Odin will dismiss these claims just like the original. Odin will also mention how Vali was banished, therefore no longer their concern. Sif will turn to her husband, forcing him to see what's going on here, which forces him to act. He turns to Loki, ready to end his life, but then Loki uses his get out of jail free card and returns back to the realm between realms. Kratos, just like in the original, will be waiting for him there. Atreus being successful on his mission to retrieve the mask from Odin's hands. Kratos and Atreus return to Sindri's house where everyone is waiting. Everyone will be happy and relieved of Atreus' safe return. Tyr will also be ecstatic, but quickly reverts to skepticism. The scene of everyone discussing the mask and what to do next will be the same. They plan to sneak into Asgard and find the mask's secrets to create an outcome where no one has to die. The only problem being finding a way into Asgard. Tyr finally decides to lock in, claiming that he has a way into Asgard. This is where we'll have Brock press Tyr, saying that something is not right. Tyr will hurry and try to walk away from the situation, but Brock will not let him. This will cause Tyr, or should I say, Odin, to finally snap, stabbing and killing Brock. He reverts into his original form and takes Atreus as hostage. Kratos, Freya, and Freyr surround him. Odin tells them to give back the mask. Freya, at first being ready to kill him, realizes she is needed to help a dying Brock. Both sides make threats to each other until Odin yells that he's in control. Freyr hesitates and then tosses the mask, making Odin reach for it. Atreus bites him in his wolf form, making him let go. Odin picks up the mask and is ready to make a dashing escape, but Kratos pulls out his axe and throws it straight at the mask, knocking it out of Odin's hands and causing it to split in half. Odin yells out no as he watches two pieces of the mask glow and zap and teleport away, being nowhere to be seen. He desperately tries to put his hands where the mask was last at. This enrages Odin, who turns back around to face our protagonist. He says, "You heartless monsters! Savages! No one else matters as long as you get your revenge, right? Well, fine! If war is what you want, then war is what you'll get!" Odin pulls out a strange device and he breaks it. Right behind our characters at the eating table, a Bifrost portal is shot, breaking the table. Freya is barely able to react as a large pair of Valkyrie wings charges at her. Gna, the Valkyrie queen, grabs Freya by the head and flies her outside. Freya yells out to Freya and goes out to help his sister. Another two Bifrost portals are called at the same time. Ve comes out of one and Vidar comes out of the other, who will now be wearing the Vidar armor set of might. Ve looks down at Sindri holding Brock's body and tries to go over and kick them, but Sindri teleports out the way just in time. Before Kratos and Atreus can even respond, another Bifrost portal is summoned and Kratos is hit in the face by Mjolnir, which was shot out of the portal in blinding speed. Mjolnir takes Kratos straight outside in front of the yard of Sindri's house. The hammer gets called back and Kratos rises to see Thor and Ve coming out of the hole that was just created. Ve laughs in excitement as he says, "God Killer! We meet at last! Oh, I'm going to enjoy this!" Thor then puts his hammer onto Ve's chest and says, "No! This one's mine!" Ve then disappointingly walks back into Sindri's house. Kratos will yell out to Atreus, telling him to run. Thor will respond, saying, "Your boy won't be going anywhere."
No more fucking games! And this time, I'm allowed to kill you.
And this is where the second Thor boss battle will begin. Thor will start off with the same moveset that he possesses at the beginning of the second boss fight in the original. He will also start off with 10 health bars. The combat in this boss fight is mostly the same. However, if you try to go airborne with the wings, Thor will throw his hammer to smack you back into the ground. But you will be able to dodge this, allowing you to throw any of your weapons at him, including the Blade of Chaos Hyperion Ram. The dialogue of this phase of the fight mainly consists of Thor making the usual death threats that he does, and Kratos mainly being worried about his son's safety. Once you get his health depleted of 3 bars, a cutscene begins where Thor headbutts Kratos in the face, then picks him up and throws him. Kratos nearly falling off of the platform and into the realm between realms, but he uses his axe to hang off the edge. Kratos looks down and then looks up at Thor, who is about to knock him off the cliff. A QTE pops up where you press circle, which has Kratos propel himself up in the air using his wings. The wind causes Thor to be stunned, and Kratos flies up and over, landing behind Thor. Thor quickly turns around and goes to strike Kratos with the hammer, but Kratos is quick to react. He caused the axe to do a clash with the hammer. The force of this clash is so strong that the whole screen flashes to white. When the flash fades, you'll see Kratos and Thor falling down in the fiery depths of Muspelheim. Lava erupts around them as they fall. They try to grab onto each other, hitting each other, but are separated once they hit the ground. Odin's bird, Hugin, can be seen above Thor, flying around before landing on a nearby cliff. Kratos and Thor both get up, and this is where the boss fight will continue. In this phase, Thor will start zipping around and doing that floating attack which you have to shield strike. The only difference being is that he will still not be in his electrocutioner form, only seeing a glimpse of it when he does certain attacks. Thor says to Kratos that he'll kill him in any realm if he has to. Thor will have a different version of his air unblockable, where he takes a moment to charge his attack up while in the air. While he's doing this, a blue current will appear on the ground below him. If you press circle while in this current, Kratos automatically ascends to Thor's level with his wings. Press R1 or R2 to strike Thor and send him back to the ground. Thor, being enraged, will say things like,
"It doesn't matter what kind of trick you pull. You die today. We can still walk from this."
"No, you can't!" This phase of the fight will also last until 3 bars are depleted. Another cutscene emerges where Thor gets mad and slams the ground. The shockwave causes ash and lava to erupt and fall towards Kratos. Kratos will lift his shield above his head and charge towards Thor, blocking any incoming molten hazards. Once he gets to Thor's position, Thor will try to strike. Press X to have Kratos roll out of the way. He stabs Thor with the Blaze of Chaos and lifts Thor and throws him onto the ground. Thor quickly returns the favor, swinging Kratos with the chain onto the ground. Kratos will get up and look up to the sky to see Thor. Lightning hits Mjolnir and he comes down on him. Kratos uses his axe to defend this blow once again, causing the screen to go white. The white will fade away to Kratos' face. Cold wind blows at him hard. He hears and feels a giant stomp. He looks up to see the cold, dark skies of Helheim, and also the giant belly, trying to mindlessly swipe at a small flying ball of electricity in the sky. Hugin will also be present above the giants flying around. The ball dodges Belly's swipe and strikes him in the face. The blow kills him instantly. Belly's body falls down, and his giant hand comes down to smack Kratos, but he holds it. Mash circle to keep the hand lifted in classic God of War fashion. He will push the hand onto the air, but see Thor flying towards him. Kratos flies out of the shadow of the hand, and a QTE of R2 appears. Press it to have Kratos attach his Blaze of Chaos onto the giant's hand. He pulls the hand down to smack Thor as he tries to rush. Thor casually lifts his hand up to escape. Kratos readies his axe with Frost, and Thor comes at him. They clash, but this time it's a longer standoff. All of Hell's structure around them begins to crumble. Kratos says,
"If any of you hurt my son, shut the fuck up and earn your right to see him die."
Cracks and realm tears form around the area. Through the tears, you can see different realms, such as Alfheim, Niflheim, and Vanaheim. They both charge their weapons to cause another explosion. Kratos and Thor fall down in the sky again. Kratos looks over to see the floating islands of Vanaheim as they quickly fall past them. Below him, he can see what looks to be a vast sea with only one island. Hugin screams, and a multitude of ravens surround Kratos and Thor in order to return their location back to Odin. Thor regains consciousness and grabs onto Kratos. He lifts his hammer full of electricity and tries to strike, but Kratos smacks Mjolnir away. Its electricity bounces into the direction of the surrounding ravens, causing a tornado of ravens and thunder, and for Hugin to scream in pain. The shock from Thor's hammer causes the ravens to teleport them in the wrong realm. They end up in Nidavellir this time, which it will be dark and stormy, both of them being on top of the face mountain that was previously destroyed during the Kraken fight. Kratos feels pain in his arm, but recovers. This is where the remainder of the boss fight will take place. Thor will now have his ability where he throws Mjolnir in the air to jump up and slam back down, but he still won't be in his Stormbreaker form. Thor will say,
"Was this your idea to make a fool of me? Have your kid come to my home and play family? Thor, I am warning you, I will have your head!"
The remainder of this boss fight will take place here. Once you get the remainder of his health bar down, Thor will take a knee and R3 appears on his head. This cutscene will have Kratos punch Thor in the face and then gets behind him to choke him out. Thor flies up in the air. He violently spins Kratos around, making him lose his grip. Kratos flies in the air, but then gains stability with his wings and dodges an incoming lightning strike from the sky. The light from the lightning illuminates the area and you see Thor floating right above Kratos. He then smacks Kratos with Mjolnir. Kratos blocks it, but the force of the blow still sends him flying hundreds and hundreds of meters. Kratos, with electricity all over his body, almost takes a dive into the sea, but he uses his axe and drags it across the ocean to freeze where he's standing, making a large ice path. Thor lands onto this path and goes for a low-hanging strike with his hammer, but this time, you notice that there is no electricity on his hammer. Instead, a cold, frosty mist. His low strike summons an icy river of knives, much larger than usual. Kratos raises his axe up to charge, but instead of ice, it is infused with lightning. Thunder strikes down on the Leviathan axe, and Kratos strikes downward. He creates a constant lightning stream, which moves forward, colliding with the river of knives. Both of the elements clash with each other and causes one more white flash. This flash will last for a long time. When the white fades, Kratos will appear in Midgard, standing on top of the frozen river. He looks across from him and sees Thor breathing heavily, a decent amount of blood being covered on both. Around his hands and hammer, you can see frozen mist that slowly fades away. Kratos looks at his axe and sees electricity flowing through it, but it slowly fades away. Thor and Kratos charge at each other with their fists, but Thor gets the best of this exchange. He punches Kratos in the face, knocking him onto the ground. He then pins him with Mjolnir. Kratos desperately tries to push it off. Thor says,
You picked the wrong god to fuck with.
Thor shocks Kratos, making him yell in pain.
I'm going to take my time finishing you off. I'm going to revel in your pain.
Then they both hear ravens screeching and forming a tornado. Odin appears, along with Vidar, who is holding Atreus captive, Gná, who is holding an injured Freya captive, and also the head of Mimir, yelling out to his brother, and Ve, who is holding Freyr. Freya yells out to Kratos, and Freyr yells out, "Don't worry about us, we're fine," in a light tone. Ve smacks him. Odin walks up to Thor and says, "Are you still fighting?"
We don't have time for this. Hurry up and get it done.
Most of them start yelling, including Kratos, who yells out to Atreus. Thor turns back to Kratos and says that he got lucky. He lifts his hammer to finish the job. Atreus yells out no. Orange electricity forms around Atreus. Odin sees this, but before he could get Vidar to restrain him more, Atreus transforms into a bear and blows everyone away. He charges full speed at Thor and tackles him. Kratos tries to yell and get him to stop. Atreus starts Bjorning all over him, mauling and shaking Thor's fat body with his mouth, then tosses him. He goes to charge at Thor again, but this time Thor smashes him, coming in right on the bear's head. Bjorn's body slides on the ice unconscious. Kratos yells for his son. Odin also yells out to Loki and runs over to him. His body reverts to a human. Odin scolds Thor.
Who told you to do that? You don't think! I think!
As Odin continues to cook Thor, Kratos starts breathing heavily. His fingers twitch as they slowly clench into fists. He sees the blood that's on him and begins to shake. His veins begin to pop out, and fire appears on his hands. Kratos erupts towards Thor, punching him straight in the jaw. The shockwave rivals the size of Jormungandr's head. Thor is sent flying an immeasurable distance. The camera follows Thor facing downward at his face. Below him on the ice, a large shadow of flying wings pass Thor's body in quick fashion. The camera looks upward to show Kratos above him, who proceeds to do an L1 triangle, smashing Thor's body onto the ground. The impact causes Thor's body to bounce off of it. The camera still follows Thor as a blade of chaos gets jammed into his head and yanks his whole body to the ground. Kratos grabs him by his hair, pulls him up to one knee. R1 appears on the screen. Press it to have Kratos right hook him. L1 appears on the screen. Press it to have Kratos left hook him. Press these two buttons repeatedly to beat the living godhood out of Thor in classic God of War fashion. As you are pushing Thor's face in, he will eventually get tired of this and grab your fist. Electricity glows in his eyes and flows throughout his body. He will then yell out,
You think that you're the one who's mad?
He blows Kratos back, finally awakening his Stormbreaker warrior madness form.
You don't know shit!
Fire flows from Kratos' arms to his blades. He starts to yell, and in the background you can hear T.C. Carson's voice. This will mark round 2 of the boss fight. You start off this fight in a new Spartan Rage variant, which will be called Spartan Frenzy. This variant allows Kratos to use his blades to the fullest potential. Press R1 in this state for Kratos to freely be able to use Rampage of the Furies followed by Cyclone of Chaos with no cooldown. R2 will be Atlas Eruption without the beginning animation. L1 will be Hades Retribution, and L2 will be Tame the Beast. However, this Spartan Rage variant will not last throughout the whole fight, and you'll be forced to normally face a powered up Thor. He will only have around 6 bars this time, but he will have new moves in his disposal. Along with all of his previous moves, he'll have an unblockable attack where he launches you in the air. If Kratos gets hit by this, Thor zips above you, lifting Mjolnir. Thunder strikes Mjolnir as it hits you back onto the ground. He'll have another ground slam attack which will act as a sweep, cracking the ground Kratos is on and causing him to fall. Thor occasionally adopts an additional health bar, which will grant him defensive properties. If you attack Thor in this state, you will be shocked by his electricity. Even if you throw the axe at him, the axe returns with electricity and shocks you anyways. The Dropnir Spear will be the only way to deplete this armored health bar. Thor will have another unblockable where he summons an ongoing lightning strike that will move towards you in a linear motion. He can still zip around and attack you while this move is active. Spartan Frenzy will have a few more chances to charge up in order for you to use, but other than that, this phase of the boss fight has 0 interruptions. Once Thor's health is completely deleted, a cutscene plays. You notice that both Kratos and Thor are bloodied up, but they still keep fighting. Thor is seen to have a massive stab wound on top of his head and more cuts on his face. Thor tries to swing his hammer, but Kratos catches it and tosses it down. He punches Thor, making his mouth leak. Thor returns the favor, making blood splatter on Kratos' face. They both continue this pattern until both of them seem to reach their limits. Kratos then pulls out a blade, trying to go for a stab. He successfully stabs Thor in the belly with one blade. He pulls out his other blade and does the same. Both of the blades ignite and begin to burn him from the inside. Thor screams out in pain as scorch marks begin to appear all over his chest. Thor takes his hands and puts them on the blades to pull them out, his hand burning and dripping with blood as he does this, but he is successful. He pulls the blades out and is able to push Kratos away. Kratos desperately tries to go in for another stab, but once he pulls his arm back, his hand is caught. Ve grabs his blade and takes Kratos for a ride, swinging him around with his own chain. He tosses Kratos in the air, and Vidar meets him there with a halberd and stabs Kratos back onto the ground. He pulls it out and then kicks Kratos in the face. Kratos tries to get up, but Mjolnir pins him to the ground once again, electrocuting him. Odin walks up to the scene. Gunnar follows him, holding Atreus' body. Odin says,
This is taking too long.
Atreus then wakes up and sees his father vulnerable once again. He tries to reach out to him, yelling at the top of his lungs, but Gunnar is able to restrain him this time. For a moment, Thor stares at Atreus, almost as if he can feel his stress. Odin then says,
What are you waiting for?
Thor turns his attention to a wounded Kratos. He lifts his hammer. The most violent stream of thunder charges his hammer. Thor's teeth clench as he absorbs even more energy. He lets out a yell which echoes throughout the entirety of Midgard, right before bringing Mjolnir onto Kratos' head. The impact causes one massive shockwave and the final white flash. Vision is regained, and it follows Atreus' point of view. He looks to see a massive deep crater where Thor and Kratos used to be. Thor flies out of the crater and towards him and Odin, his hammer and arms completely painted in red. On the other hand, he holds the Leviathan axe. He tells his father,
It's done.
Atreus is in complete shock, not being able to say a word. Odin says,
Finally, now we can go. Wait a second. I believe he had a ring on his finger. Go back down and get it.
Thor turns back towards the crater ready to go down, but before he does, Ve looks down at the crater and says,
Oh, come on! Why did you mash his head into pieces? That was supposed to go to my collection.
I used too much power.
I guess this will do. Give it here.
Ve takes the bloody axe from Thor and says to Odin,
So? What about the other ones?
Leave them. They won't be a problem anymore. Just hurry up and get the ring. Atreus begins to suddenly shake, and his eyes begin to glow white. He opens his mouth and speaks the ancient tongue of the giants. The entire area begins to shake violently as Jormungandr's head emerges from the ice. He charges at Thor, who stands his ground ready, but he was not. Jormungandr smacks him into the air, turning him into a distant ball of electricity. Thor will hit him back, which Jorm is stunned from, but Jorm smacks him far into the distance, no longer to be seen. Jorm follows where Thor has landed. Then suddenly, Fenrir also shows up and bites onto Vidar, who struggles to keep his mouth from closing, but he quickly manages to keep his mouth open and completely exposed. Ve then goes inside the mouth to cut and stab onto it using the Leviathan axe. Ve starts to laugh as he threatens to turn Fenrir into a meal, which causes Atreus to scream out to him. Jorm returns and attacks, but a purple aura immobilizes him in the middle of the air. You look to see Odin's hand full of purple runic energy. He turns to Atreus and says,
"The mask wasn't just for me. It was for everyone, mortal and god kind. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but you and your people keep trying to take what's mine, and this is what happens. Oh fuck!"
Jormungandr's body glows a disturbing color of purple until his head explodes, creating massive purple fireworks in the sky. The rest of his serpent body falls down. Atreus yells at the sight in complete hopeless despair and falls down in sorrow. Vidar is seen pinning down a weakened Fenrir with his iron boot. He lets go when he realizes Fenrir is unconscious. Ve, Vidar, and Gná return to the Allfather, ready for their next order. Odin wipes off his cloak as he says, "I think we've had enough of this cold. Make sure to bring the kid. Gná, I'll send you to where you can take care of that dog. Don't worry about Thor. He's fine." Atreus looks down in complete silence as the ravens surround all of them. They are transported back into Asgard, and they appear in front of the dining hall with the long table, with the exception of Gná, who was sent elsewhere with Fenrir. The table is crowded with Asgardians, along with some familiar faces sitting down, such as Vili, Forseti, and Thrud. Heimdall will stand in his familiar spot. Ve goes up to the anticipating citizens and yells out while holding the Leviathan axe,
"Death to the god killer!"
All of them begin to cheer in celebration and excitement. Some Einherjar raise their jugs, which inspires Ve for another drink. Vidar leaves the hall immediately, being uninterested. Vili can be seen staring down at the table. Thrud, who still seems to look sad, sees Atreus' demeanor and feels worse. Forseti looks mildly annoyed by the cheering, but he stays seated with the drink. Odin tells Atreus to meet him in his office when he's ready, and then he leaves. Atreus, not having no reason to do anything else, slowly walks out of the hall. Towards the wall Heimdall leans on, you can see an already drunk Ve talking to him.
"It was a classic. Violent, bloody, cries, death. I do not care. Please go away. You're just jealous that you didn't. You're just jealous you didn't get to see it."
Heimdall walks away out of annoyance. Ve tells him to wait up because he didn't tell him what happened.
"Let me guess."
Atreus walks out and goes into Odin's office. He will be waiting down in the basement where Odin will try to have a talk with him. Atreus will begin to yell at him first, saying,
"Why am I here? We took the mask, destroyed it. What do you want? What do you want?"
"We still have a lot of work to do."
"I'm not doing anything with you. Torture me, kill me, I don't care. I'm not helping you." "And why would I do that?" "Because I betrayed you. You can't trust me anymore. You have no use for me. So stop wasting our time." "Well, if that's the case, I should just kill everyone in Asgard. Start Ragnarok myself. Get it over with." "See, that's your problem, son. Don't call me that." "Thinking that we have to be against each other. That's what led to today, which I was trying to avoid. All I want is answers, which I am not giving up on. Now, you have a choice in helping me, of course. But before you give me your answer, I want you to think about those who died today. And those who lived."
Atreus looks down in shame, no longer able to speak. You can still save them. We can still do great work together, Loki. We can stop this from ever happening again. Even after today, I still trust that you're able to make the wise decision. With that, Odin teleports away with his ravens, leaving Atreus in the cave alone. Atreus mindlessly roams the cave, his mind never actually leaving what just happened in Midgard. But then, he tries to bury all of the thoughts away, all of the guilt. He goes up to Odin's desk, looking for any type of scroll or book which would have information that he could use. He makes a mess of everything while looking, and then he suddenly hears a voice say,
Of course.
Atreus turns to see Heimdall.
After everything that's happened, after all of the chances he's given you, you still desperately look for ways to deceive him?
Atreus pulls out his bow and yells at Heimdall, telling him to stay away. Heimdall still approaches.
You really are as dumb as they come. I am going to end this now.
He deflects the arrow that Atreus shoots. He grabs his bow and kicks him away from it. He then uses his knee to snap the bow in half. Atreus pulls out his eider blade and goes for a stab, but it gets smacked out of his hand. Heimdall backhands him to the ground, drawing blood. He says,
No one's here to save you this time.
He kicks Atreus while he's down, and then grabs him by the hair. Both of them are now dangerously close to the blue tear of death.
Now, I'm wondering how exactly should I kill you? Should I beat you to a pulp? Or should I gut you like a fish using your own knife?
Atreus looks over to the blue tear of death out of fear. Heimdall reads his mind.
Oh, is that what that is? I'm gonna put your face in it now. Feel free to beg.
Atreus proceeds to beg, repeatedly saying no and please out of fear as Heimdall tries to push his head inside the tear. Atreus does all he can to fight against the push, but he is eventually overpowered. He successfully pushes Atreus' face inside the tear. Atreus is sent inside this dark blue dimension, and his body starts to very slowly disintegrate into blue sparkles. Right when it seems to be all over for him, a blue hand appears and grabs hold of Atreus, yanking him out of that dimension, and he appears in Helheim. Atreus looks around, still startled by everything, confused about why he's in hell. He feels a cold hand touch his shoulder from behind, and just in classic Atreus fashion, he turns screaming. He turns around and sees a familiar face, Ron, who tries her best to calm him down, telling him that it is okay and that he's safe. When Atreus catches his breath and calms down, he goes to hug her and says that he's glad that she's alive. She says that she's glad that she was able to save him in time. He then says,
You did that? How?
Well, I seen your death happening and I pulled you out. That's the best I can explain it. So, I'm not dead. Nope. Although I may get in trouble for this. The Watcher of Hell is not supposed to interfere with the dead. Wait, but Hrollsfigr is the Watcher of Hell. For now, I've decided to follow my destiny. Hrollsfigr showed me that the future doesn't have to be a bad one. Atreus then looks down, sad and silent. Ron sees this and begins to walk away. Atreus says, Where are you going? Ron responds, Come, I'm going to show you what I've learned. Atreus slowly gets up and follows her. They both walk into the distance until the winds of hell cover their trail. The screen fades to black and the credits roll. And that would put an end to the first game of the God of War Ragnarok rewrite. Now, I noticed the way that I ended the story, there would not leave any room for any post-campaign gameplay, which has become the standard in all of the open world titles, including the original game. Which means if you were to hypothetically complete the story of this rewrite, you will be sent back to the menu and given the option for New Game Plus. Now I know this may be a bummer for some, but I really don't know what to tell you. Like, replay the game. We used to do that with the old ones. And speaking of post-game content, I would like to address how I didn't rewrite any side missions in this series. I know that a lot of them will have to be switched out or changed in some way because of how drastically I changed the campaign, but considering how long this took, we would have been here forever. But in the rewrite, the Niflheim Arena and the Muspelheim challenges, I would probably definitely keep those in. I would probably even put the Niflheim Arena in the menu so it'd be easier to access. But anyways, I would like to take a moment to say thank you for all of the positive feedback y'all have given me throughout the year. You guys are really the reason this shit got past part 4. Like, the only thing I really wanted to add was air combo. Part 11, unfortunately, will not be the next video on the channel. I'm finna go do something else. But nonetheless, I really hope y'all enjoyed this series and enjoyed this part. Let me know your honest opinions in the comments, man. And I guess that's it. Like, oh shit, hold up. We got an after credits cutscene. Don't go nowhere. After the credits are done crediting, the black screen dissolves as yellow lightning flashes. The camera shows Kratos on the ground with his eyes closed. He opens his eyes and abruptly wakes up. Rain pours onto his face. Thunder shines and cracks in the distance. He notices that the icy ground of Midgard has been replaced by dark, wet stone. He looks in front of him and sees feet in sandals walk up to him. He hears voices speak in confused tones. He looks up to see people holding large bronze shields painted with red V's along with spears, wearing helmets with red mohawks. Being absolutely overwhelmed and confused by these weird dressing people, he turns around. Over the edge of the cliff he's on, he sees fire raging over damaged buildings in Greek architecture. Above them lays the destroyed statue of the Colossus of Rhodes. Kratos was Jormungandr this whole time.